December 2001. Buenos Aires, the Palermo neighborhood. Sophia is a 38-year-old credit approval specialist. She has a magnificent apartment, a car bought on credit, a life insurance policy she's been paying into for 11 years, and a small vacation house outside Mendoza. All of it is a life built through effort, patience, and following the rules. A life the way a middle-class life is supposed to be. On December 1st, the government froze all bank accounts. You can withdraw up to 250 pesos a week, no more. Within days, the peso broke away from the dollar. Within a few weeks, the currency lost 70% of its value. Riots erupted in the streets. In 11 days, 5 presidents came and went. Retirees marched in front of Casa Rosada banging pots and pans, and the police pushed them back with tear gas. Sophia stayed in her apartment, surrounded by everything she owned. And slowly, she began to understand something no one had ever explained. Not her parents, not her professors, not her financial advisor. Every purchase that had been sold to her as smart, safe, and responsible had become dysfunctional. Not damaged, not stolen, just useless. This is not only Argentina's story. Weimar Germany, the Soviet Union, Greece, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Lebanon. The same pattern repeated again and again with mechanical certainty. And each time it destroyed the same people. The rule followers, the believers in the system, the ones who did what they were told. Collapse is quiet. Most people know economic collapse from movies. Empty streets, burning cars, soldiers on corners. Sometimes it looks like that. Usually it doesn't. Real collapse is calmer, quieter, more bureaucratic. Shops are still open, but prices change every week. Banks still exist, but they won't give you your money. Your house is still standing, but nobody will buy it. Your car still runs, but fuel costs more than your daily wage. Collapse is not everything stopping. It is a relationship between money and reality breaking. When price signals distort, the purchases you made based on those signals lose meaning too. Physically intact, but economically dead. Not destruction, disconnection. That is the mechanism. And the purchases that become useless are not random. They are almost always the ones most recommended to the middle class. Trap 1, real estate. Land is real. They're not making any more of it. Property always goes up. Your home is your biggest asset. These lines have been repeated, so often they feel like natural law, but they aren't. They're beliefs, and beliefs are fragile. Japan, 1991. Real estate prices in Tokyo had inflated so much that the land under the Imperial Palace was worth more than all the real estate in California. Families took out 100-year mortgages to buy modest suburban apartments. 100 years, debt across generations. It will go up, they said. Japan is different, they said. Prices fell, and kept falling for more than 30 years. In some areas, values lost 80%. You couldn't sell because it was worth less than the debt. You couldn't move because the mortgage followed you. The biggest asset had become the biggest liability. The U.S., 2008. 10 million Americans lost their homes to foreclosure. Most of them were not reckless speculators. They were ordinary people who bought homes in a market that was described as safe at the wrong time. In Greece, property values fell 42% in 5 years, but the real problem wasn't the price. There were no buyers. The market froze. Unsellable properties were taxed more each year. You couldn't sell, and it still consumed cash. Sophia's vacation house near Mendoza fell to 40% of what she paid. Nobody bought it. Maintenance costs continued. Property taxes piled up. It stopped being an asset and became a cost center. The mechanism is this. Real estate doesn't become useless because the building collapses. It becomes useless when the financial architecture around it collapses. Mortgages become unpayable, markets freeze, taxes rise. And exactly when you need it, you cannot turn your home into cash. That is the trap. Trap 2, the car. Venezuela, 2012. People were buying cars at record speed. Credit was common. New cars were status symbols, and they were seen as a store of value against inflation. Buy before prices rise became a national mindset. By 2016, the economy had shrunk by more than 30%. Inflation had exceeded 800%, and that car couldn't outrun uselessness. You couldn't drive because there was no fuel. They sat on the world's largest oil reserves, but the refinery system had collapsed. You couldn't repair it because there was no foreign currency to import parts. Tires were a luxury. 4 new tires cost more than most people's annual income. Insurance became meaningless. Roads deteriorated. In garages, physically intact vehicles piled up, completely useless, and the loan payments were still due. Income was destroyed, but debt remained. In Cuba after the Soviet collapse, people who had bought new Soviet vehicles learned a different lesson. Parts didn't exist in the Western Hemisphere. In a few years, the cars became yard ornaments. A car is not a standalone asset. Fuel, spare parts, insurance, roads. Remove one and the car starts dying. Remove 3 and it's dead. Did you notice who suffered most wasn't the people who bought old cars with cash? They lost less. The ones destroyed were the people who bought new cars on credit, still paying for vehicles they could no longer fuel, repair, or insure. Debt does not collapse with the economy. That gap is where the middle class gets crushed. Trap 3. Life insurance and retirement. This may be the most painful one, because these are the products bought by the most responsible people, those who sacrifice for the future, who believe in and trust the system most deeply. Weimar Germany. Before World War I, Germany's insurance and pension system was one of the most advanced in Europe. Workers paid regularly. Middle-class families held life insurance. It was modern and reliable. The hyperinflation of 1921 to 1923 erased it. A policy that could buy a house in 1914 could not buy a loaf of bread in 1923. Not metaphorically, literally. The insurer technically paid. It paid the nominal value. But money had become meaningless. Full payment on paper, total ruin in reality. Teachers, veterans, civil servants who served the state for decades received their pensions. But those pensions couldn't buy food. They weren't scammed. Nothing was stolen. The value of the currency simply collapsed. Argentina, 2008. The government nationalized $30 billion in private pension funds. Funds people had contributed to for years, believing they were private and protected. Under budget pressure, the state seized them and folded them into general spending. The promise remained. The value evaporated. Lebanon, 2019. People who had saved in dollar accounts in one of the region's most banked countries believed their dollars were safe. Banks didn't give them their money, either not all, or only at discounts up to 90%. The building was still standing. The logo was still on the door. The money was gone. Long-term financial products are promises. For those promises to hold, the currency must retain value. The institution must survive, and the government must not rewrite the rules. A collapse destroys all of that at once. These products were designed for the old world. In the new world, they are invalid. Trap 4, the university degree. Knowledge itself is useful, always, but a diploma is not knowledge. It is a signal sent to a specific labor market. I completed this program. I fit this category of job. If that market disappears, the signal becomes meaningless. In the Soviet Union, millions of engineers, scientists, managers were trained. Their diplomas were functional, directly tied to the state plan economy. When the system collapsed, the job market attached to those diplomas collapsed too. Engineers drove taxis. Physicists ran street stalls. Professors earned less than street vendors. Their education wasn't bad. The system was designed to serve no longer existed. The key remained. The lock had changed. In Greece after 2010, youth unemployment reached 60%. Families made huge sacrifices to send their children abroad to study in the UK or Germany. They returned with degrees in law, business, architecture, and there were no jobs. An estimated 200,000 educated young Greeks emigrated. Families were left with both the debt and the absence. Spain, Italy, same story. The most educated generations in history were left without the economy they were trained for. A diploma is a bet on a particular economic structure, that the labor market will persist, industry will survive, the wage premium will continue. In collapse, all those assumptions collapse together. The debt remains. The job does not. Trap 5. Everything bought on credit. Home theater systems, designer furniture, renovated kitchens, installment electronics. These are the accumulated weight of a life built on assumptions that income will continue, credit will remain available, and the currency will hold value. In Zimbabwe at the peak of hyperinflation, people bought whatever they could. Saving money was pointless. It would be worth less tomorrow. Physical objects held value better than currency. But then electronics broke, and parts weren't available. Appliances failed, and technicians had left the country. Clothes wore out, and industry had collapsed. There was no way to turn a used television into food or medicine. People who spent on objects ended up, after the collapse, with full homes and empty pockets. In Lebanon, credit cards, installment plans, personal loans, pegged to the dollar, in a currency said to be safe. The peg broke. The lira lost 90% of its value. The debts remained. Income melted. The renovated kitchens and designer furniture are still there, but they can't be sold, can't help, and you can't find bread. In a stable economy, buying things is building a life. In a collapsing economy, things become weight. They tie you to a place you may need to flee. They consume resources needed for survival. And if they were bought on credit, they become a continuing obligation in an environment where your income is disappearing. A TV doesn't feed you. A sofa doesn't protect you. The pattern. 5 categories: real estate, cars, financial products, diplomas, consumer goods. What do they have in common? In modern consumer societies, these are exactly what the middle class is most strongly advised to buy. The checklist: buy a home, buy a car, get insurance, get educated, furnish your life. And in every economic collapse, these are among the first things that break. Not coincidence. Structural. The wealthy hold diversified, international assets designed to withstand systemic shock. The poor have little to lose. They already survive in informal economies, barter networks, cash worlds. The middle class is fully invested in the system. Wealth is trapped in a mortgaged home. Mobility is tied to a finance car. Security is tied to an institutional pension fund. The future is a bet on a diploma tied to a particular labor market. Identity is tied to credit-backed consumption. Everything runs through the formal financial system. When the system breaks, everything breaks together. Collapses do not destroy the rich. The system is built for them. They do not relatively destroy the poor. They were already outside. They destroy the middle class, specifically, mechanically, almost surgically. And the most bitter part, the purchases that fail are the ones most encouraged. The house called an investment, the car called necessary, the retirement called safe, the diploma called indispensable, the lifestyle you were told you earned. Each one is a bet. That money will hold. Institutions will stand. Labor markets will persist. Governments will keep their word. In stable periods, these bets win for so long they stop looking like bets and start feeling like certainty. Then the system breaks. What history says: since 1900, there have been at least 68 sovereign debt crises and 58 currency crises, according to the findings of researchers Carmen Reinhardt and Kenneth Rogoff. The probability that an average citizen in an average country experiences at least one major financial crisis during their adult life is roughly 1 in 3. 1 in 3. Weimar Germany was one of Europe's most culturally advanced nations. Argentina in 1913 was among the 10 richest countries in the world. Lebanon was called the Switzerland of the Middle East. Venezuela holds the world's largest proven oil reserves. Greece was a member of the European Union, under the umbrella of the European Central Bank. None of it mattered. So what is this saying? This text is not saying don't buy a house, not don't get educated, not don't save for retirement. In a functioning economy, these can be rational decisions. What it is saying is this: truly know and understand what you are buying. Every long-term financial commitment is a bet that the system will remain stable, and that stability was never guaranteed. When you look at what survivors of past collapses had in common, what do you see? Not what they bought, how they structured. They kept liquid resources. They didn't put everything in one basket. They preserved their ability to move and adapt. They understood the difference between feel-good consumption and real resilience. And most importantly, they knew the rules could change. A contract you sign can be rewritten by a desperate government. Your savings currency can be devalued by a central bank. The institution holding your pension can be nationalized. These aren't conspiracy theories. They happen to real people, documented, dated, measured events. Buenos Aires. The worst is technically over. Sophia still has her apartment, but it's worth half as much. She still has her car, but she can barely keep it running. Her life insurance paid out its nominal value, enough to buy 2 weeks of food. The vacation house sits empty, and the tax debts keep piling up. Her diploma still hangs on the wall. She no longer has a job as a credit approval specialist. She works an administrative role at an export company, earning a third of what she used to. She's alive, still standing. But she learned something she will never forget. Every purchase that was presented as smart, safe, and responsible was really nothing more than a bet. And those bets were placed on a system that didn't hold. The system wasn't designed to betray her, but was designed in a way that made betrayal inevitable under certain conditions. And those conditions arrived. Those conditions always arrive somewhere, sooner or later. Subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.